Well, today we're going to talk about the legacy of the 8-track tape, which is popular culture, and we're also going to talk about its impact to both American and international societies. Okay, let's give you a few background information about the 8-track tape. The 8-track tape is a magnetic tape sound recording technology that was popular from the mid 1960s to the early 1980s, when compact cassette tapes, which predated the 8-track tape, surpassed its popularity for pre-recorded music. When you think about this, the format is obsolete and was relatively known outside of the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Germany. The main advantage of the 8-track cartridge is that it does not have to be flipped over to play the alternative set of tracks. Moving on, the stereo and cartridge was created in 1964 by a consortium led by Bill Lear of Learjet Corporations, along with the Apex Ford Motor Company, General Ford Motors, Motorola, RCA Vector Records, RCA Radio Corporation of America. It was a further development of the similar stereo pack, 4-track cartridge, which had been introduced by pioneer businessman and engineer Earl Madman Munitz, who promoted and sold consumer electronics to the American public at the time. Lear had tried to create an endless loop wire recorder in the 1940s, but gave up in the 1946, only to be re-inspired by Mute's 4-track design in 1963. Munich's design had itself adapted from the field pack cartridge, which in turn had been developed by George Flash. A later quadragraphic foam 4-channel sound, as opposed to the earlier, more widely used stereo 2-channel sound version of the format, was announced by RCA on April 4, 1970, and called the first Quad 8 and later the QB. So let's talk about the development of tape cartridges. Okay, tape cartridge is an endless loop tape cartridge. Was first designed in 1952 by Bernard Cassino around a single reel carrying a continuous loop of standards 1 4 inch plastic oxidized created recording tape running at 3.75 and 9.53 centimeter per second. The program starts and stops were signaled by the 1-inch long metal foil that activates the track change sensor. Inventor George East invented a cartridge design in 1953 called the Fiddlepack cartridge. Okay, let's talk about commercial success and local and international of the 8-track cartridge. The popularity of both 4-track and 8-track cartridges grew from the becoming of the automobile industry. When you think about automobiles, in September 1965, the Ford Motor Company introduced factory-installed and dealer-installed 8-track tape players as an option on 3 of its 1966 models: the sporty Mustang, the luxurious Thunderbird, and the high-end Lincoln. Wow, didn't everybody have a Lincoln? And the RCA Vector introduced the 175 stereo cartridge from its RCA Victor and RCA Camden labels of recording artists' catalogs. The 8-track format gained steadily in popularity because of its convenience and portability. Home players were introduced in 1966 that allowed consumers to share tapes between their homes and portable systems. By the late 1960s, the 8-track segment was the largest in consumer electronics market, and the popularity of the 8-track system for cars helped generate demand for home units. Wow. Boombox type portable players were also popular, but 8-track players recorders failed to gain wide popularity, and few manufacturers offered them except for the manufacturer, and I'm taking you back here, Tandy Corporation, for its Radio Shack electronic stores. By the late 1960s, pre-recorded releases on the 8-track tape format began to arrive within a month of the vinyl release. The 8-track format became by far the most popular and offered largest music library for all tape systems. Okay. Last but not least, the quadraphonic sound of the 8-track cartridge was announced by RCA in April 1970. Okay, let's give you some of the 9 best-selling 8-tracks of the 1969 by our intern Carla. Iron Butterfly, In the Gaddy DeVita, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Crosby, Still and Nash, Crosby, Still and Nash, Johnny Cash, Johnny Cash at San Quentin, Donovan's Greatest Hits, Blind Faith, and also the most notable, the Beatles, Abbey Road. Okay, let's talk about some interesting, cool facts about the 8-track tape. Some artists still use 8-track tapes to release their albums in 2011. Wow. On the US band RTB2 released an album, We Are the Strange Man, using 8-track tape on brickback. The 70s affects popular American rock bands like the Melvins, Cheap Trick, released their live album in 8-track tapes for a limited time. In the year 1988, a most notable group, Fleetwood Mac, Greatest Hits was considered the final album released on an 8-track tape. In 1971, Daisuke House invented the first karaoke machine, and he named it the 8-Juke. It consisted of an 8-track tape player, amplifier, comb box, and microphone. It is said that the NU had sold nearly 250,000 of its 8 jukeboxes. So, if you're collecting tapes of famous titles like The License to Ill or The American Fool, you can get it only from recording clubs. In the 1970s, 13 tapes or a record was sold for a penny at Columbia House. It also had the provisions to supply tapes through a mall order, so you can go to the mall and pick it up. Okay. Now we're going to talk about famous hits that are displayed on 8-track tapes, which we have in the studio. One of my favorites, Michael Jackson, Thriller, 1982. Aerosmith, Rockin' Hard Places, 1982. Beastie Boys, License to Ill, 1986. I can remember that. Eagles' Greatest Hits, Volume 2, 1982. Fleetwood Mac, Mirage, 1982. Go-Go's, Vacation, 1982. And most notably on the list, on Carla's list, is the Jackson 5, 16 Greatest Hits, released in 1982. A fan favorite, Mick Jagger, She's the Boss, 1985. And most notably, the Rest in Peace to Prince, 1999 and 1983. Also making the list, Lionel Richie, 1982. And one of our other favorites was part of our Vinyl Matters moment is Sade Promise, 1985. And the most illustrious, Diana Ross, Swept Away in 1984. Let's talk about the decline and the demise of the 8-track tape. 1978 was the peak of the 8-track series sales in the United States, with sales declining year on year since then. 8-track players became less common in homes and in vehicles in the late 1970s. The compact cassette arrived in 1963, if everybody can remember, popping in your cassette tape and listening to your Walkman or running or doing some type of exercise with the development of the cassette tape. By the late 1970s, the 8-track cartridge had greatly diminished in popularity. In some Latin American countries as well as European, the format was abandoned in the mid-1970s in favor of smaller cassette tapes, which was 1/3 the size, before being replaced by computer-generated sound in the 1990s. Now we're moving into another era of MP3 files and things like that. It persisted for relatively short sound loops, where starting from the beginning and was more important than other criteria. The endless loop tape concept continued to be used in newer movie projectors. Through their tape spool is actively rotated and not drawn by tensions of the film. The technology is now being supplemented by digital cinema. So as we sign out and talking about the development of the 8-track tape, we would like for you to open your minds. But again, remember, on every record or every 8-track lies jazz, hip hop, rock and roll, and this segment is being brought to you by Diggin In The Crates Hip Hop Podcast, the Hooker and Mac Show, and also we have 3 shows: Balanced Behavior, Primetime Sports, and the Hooker and Mac Show. So music is real, music fills the soul, and we'll tune out.